Hello, everybody.
I don't
Welcome
think.
back to this week's episode of the Clonestar podcast. I am your host, Mike Overton, and Joseph, pull yourself together, man. Joining me in the co-host seat this week is my wonderful friend from Limerick, Joseph Hurley. How are you doing this week?
I'm enjoying my Barry's tea out of my plastic mug here.
Good, good. Now, this week we are joined by a man with, well, quite frankly, a ridiculous CV. You might know him from such shows as Quantum Leap, Elementary, Orphan Black, Gotham, True Detective, Grimm, True Blood, The Tudors, and 24. And that's only scratching the surface and not even mentioning the movies he's been in, such as Tron Legacy. We would know him best for his time on Star Trek Discovery as Sarek. This week, we are delighted to be joined by the incredibly talented James Frain. James, thank you so much for coming on.
Mike, would you like to be my agent?
Yes, 100%.
Because that is how it's done.
I will send you, I'll send you a recording. So then every time someone asks who you are,
exactly what you just put there, I want my answer phone.
I'll give you an audio snippet. There you
go. Because you know what happens to me? Because people, the thing that people most often say to me is they come up to me and they're like, what do I know you from?
Yep.
What is it? What do I know? What is it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you watch, but what I stopped saying was going through my CV because they'd be like, no, maybe it's someone else. Like now I'm like, I just say I'm the guy you saw in the movie on the plane that time.
So you have
yes.
So you are one of those that guys. Then
that's what they call it in America. You're that guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
and what I say is, yes, that means I'm so good. I disappear into character, and they're like, no, it means you're B-list. You're B-list.
Well, you could go. Hang on. Did I have pointy ears? Did I have fangs? Did I have cat eyes? Or was I very pasty white with a face shield?
Right.
I don't know.
Is it my genre work?
Is it theatre?
Or my genre work?
This is kind of turning into a situation where James is going to have to bring around like one of those Guess Who kind of tablets, like with a kind of a headshot of him in all his different roles. Going, okay, just tick off whichever one you don't think I am. You'll eventually narrow it down to the right version of me at some point.
Are you wearing glasses? Yes. No.
or James is going to reach into his jacket and all the tea is going to fall out and he'll go, here's a copy of my CV as well, you can have that, and you might be able to identify the movie.
They don't say CV, by the way.
It's resume.
They're very confused by that. Yeah, resume. Yeah, they're like, well, why do you say CV? And I'm like, it stands for curriculum vitae. And they were like, and that's the problem with the English. Do you see? And I'm like, I do see. I do.
You see,
resume it is. Resume it is.
Oh God!
I always thought it was resume.
Laughing so much.
Right, you thought it was resume. You want to see my resume? I'm like, surely you understand it's curriculum vitae. I mean,
it's so obvious. What else could it be? Like,
because that means next. But yes, I have done all of those things.
James, taking it all the way back to the very start, how did you get into acting? Like, was it a creative house that you grew up in, or what was this that brought it about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is a very long time ago. This is now in the sort of Paleolithic period, but I think I always wanted to be an actor. I don't think it was something that ever felt realistic. It was like wanting to be a pop star or an astronaut or something, you know? And I just kept, so it was like, it was just sort of always there in the background. And then, I mean, I think actually this is probably the story for a lot of people who get into acting, is like a really good English teacher putting on school plays, and then you really enjoying it, and then them saying you're quite good at this, and then you going, really? And then, this sort of like trajectory of then, I mean, in the UK, it's quite easy because the process is you go to drama school, and if you get into drama school, you're basically through the first round of any kind of like a reality show singing contest. You're into the second round. And then when you graduate from drama school, you're into the third round. Now you've got a good 1 to 2% chance of working. So it funnels people in a kind of way. So if you can get into drama school, that's basically someone saying you may have a shot one day.
And like as a kid, then were you kind of a shy person, an introvert, or were you more extrovert? Because obviously, getting up on stage isn't going to be for everyone. So, like, how did you take to doing that?
Yeah, so that's a good question because we have these. Yeah, I thought about this a lot actually, introverts and extroverts. Because do you know about like how they mix, how these qualities mix in people? Like you can have social introverts and you can have antisocial extroverts, for
Hmm.
example. And so someone explained this to me. You can know what you are essentially by how you recharge, right? So people who are extrovert, if they spend a lot of time alone, they get depleted. Whereas people who are introvert, if they spend a lot of time with people, they get depleted. So introverts need to kind of regroup by spending time alone, and extroverts not regroup, recharge from the energy of being around other people. So even if you can be a shy extrovert, which is I think probably what I was, which is I needed to be out with people, I needed to be kind of connecting with people, I need that energy. And if I was on my own, I'd be like, "Ugh." But also I was like, it didn't come necessarily very naturally. Um, yeah, and that's quite a lot of actors are like that, I've noticed. Because but a lot of actors are quite introverted because it's wanting other people to see you only in the context of pretending to be someone else. Bit of a tell.
And in terms of, say, what were some of the plays that you would have done, say, in school? I'm going to take a wild guess here. Were some of them Shakespeare plays by any chance?
How the hell did you come up with
No,
that?
I'm just, I like, I have to do the lottery tonight. I'm in the zone that much that I can kind of just figure that one
I
out.
did actually no, I did the first. I think I joined, I can't remember the circumstance. I joined, there was like a local, my town where I grew up, there's a local drama club, and we did a play called Claudius the Bee. And I think it was a satire, but I was far too young to understand it. Me and my brother, my next brother down, were in it. I was a bee and he was a wasp. And we had the full on humiliating costume. Um, but I was like, I'm enjoying this. I'm buzzing around. And then at school we did more, at school we did kind of like the kind of plays they would do at the National Youth Theatre. So they were like plays about football hooligans and things like that. And then eventually you have to do like your Brecht, your Shakespeare, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
How did you find the Shakespeare dialogue? Because it's not for everyone. It's quite tough.
Well, this is something I'm kind of have a bee in my bonnet about that because I think it's taken me a long time to figure out how to do it, but I have come across people who really help me with that. And there's most of the way we do it, I think, is probably not right, and that's why it seems so odd and awkward. But like once you understand how the rhythm actually works and how to make it sound like natural speech, it's totally doable. A
And
lot
James, I'm
of
going
the
to
archaic words, a lot of the kind of words where you're like, what are they saying? Is most of that is dirty jokes that have no longer, that if you, there's a great book called Filthy Shakespeare, which has all of the slang in the plays for genitalia, sex, trans, anal sex, the whole everything, the panoply of human sexual experience is in the plays under all these kind of code in this code language it's really filthy and it's hilarious because you're like, oh, hey nonny nonny really doesn't mean hey nonny nonny. It's more like a little bit of the other, which we don't say anymore. So yeah, that's half of Shakespeare is dirty jokes and the rest of it is saying it wrong.
My word. James, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you give me a line of Shakespeare then that you think gets mispronounced and what the right way to pronounce it is?
It's not the right pronunciation. I don't think it's right or wrong necessarily. I think the fact that we have rules around it is the problem. And I think that they should not teach it in school, and because they teach it, people hate it. And I don't like the way they teach it.
It was like we had J.G. Hertzler on the show before, who played Martok on Deep Space Nine, and he has this crazy theory that Shakespeare was not Shakespeare, but was a combination of...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're not going to entertain that conspiracy theory, James, and that's the truth. I can see.
No. Most important thing about Shakespeare is an actor.
Yeah.
So he writes for actors. That's why actors really like Shakespeare. This is like he encodes in the language the emotional journey of the character. And once you understand that, that's your kind of way in. But if you don't, then it's just like blah-de, blah-de, blah, blah-de, blah. And you're kind of talking on top of it, you know?
Yeah.
In terms of then, say, as you were kind of going through, say, doing the school plays and all that kind of thing, like, what did you see was going to be your future? Did you say, I'm going to be a stage actor? Or did you say, actually, wait a second, I'm getting good at this. Maybe I could get onto a TV show, or I could get into the movies and things like that. What did you think would be your future?
Yeah, I don't think my brain was functioning on that level at all. I was like, what's happening this weekend? And then the rest is just fantasy, right? So it's just like, it wasn't like I didn't have a plan. I didn't think I'd ever be in a movie. I was like, I think just being able to have a job as an actor seemed like pretty much landing on the moon at that point.
And what was some of the first roles you kind of got, like, on the main stage itself, outside of, say, the school plays you would have been in and things like that? I'm sorry now, James. I'm really challenging your memory here on a lot of kind of stuff, bringing it all back.
There needs to be like an IMDb
yeah, not like
theatre.
roles. Yeah, I think there is, but it's not as But I don't think it was until really I went to college and I started going to like Edinburgh Festival and doing stuff like that. So a lot of new players, honestly, was more my thing.
And did you find then, kind of like being on the stage, you were kind of growing in confidence yourself and kind of saying, I'm actually getting kind of really good at it? Like, did you kind of, when you left school and all that? Okay.
No.
So is there a bit of imposter syndrome when you were doing it up on stage?
Always. It never goes away. And no. I mean, all you can think is, God, I'm terrible. And that's every actor secretly thinks that, whether they tell you that or not. And you have to that's the battle of your career, right? But you kind of then are dependent on people going, it wasn't that bad. There was some really good bits in Act 2. I almost believed you. And so bit by bit, you kind of figure it out, you know? But no, there was never a day where I was like, I have arrived, which is kind of what you think might happen, you know, that someone's going to appear like at the Wizard of Oz and go, here's your courage badge. It's like, you are an actor. It's like, no, that never happens. And I remember when I was like actually starting to get work and I was meeting like very successful people, like real names, people with Oscars and stuff. And I was like, does the fear ever go away? And they're like, oh no. I was like, oh, no, it gets worse. Does it? Oh yeah. Do you ever feel like you've ever done a good performance? Not really, no.
So hang on a second. In your entire career, then, is there any point where you would actually say, I'm happy with that role?
The
fact that you have to think about that.
I mean, the thing is, this is a really good question about the process, right? This is a really fascinating thing about the process. Is because I teach a little bit of acting now, and I do a little bit of directing, so I see a bit from the other side as well. And anytime you think you're doing really good work, almost certainly you're being terrible, because you're kind of like enjoying yourself in the role, right? So you're sort of watching yourself on some level and going, "This is really quite good," which means you're not in it.
Yeah.
If you're in it, you're usually playing someone who's having the worst day of their lives. And that doesn't feel good. So if you're feeling the feelings of the character, it feels awful. You feel awkward. You feel vulnerable. You feel angry or upset or hurt. And that's always coming from these very kind of painful places. And they say cut, and you're like, oh my God, I suck. And they're like, no, you look pretty good. And so you never know on the day. You only know when you see it all cut together at the end, and you're like, okay, that was actually. But it's more like, oh, that take worked. You know, in the studio, you can go, that take worked, or that half of that take worked, or that scene really fit, or that came across differently than how I thought. You can't really see yourself.
So do you think that in that situation, James, that it's better for actors to kind of have not a fear of failure in their head, but do you know what I mean? Like kind of this constant drive to say, I want to try and do this really well to kind of, keep them on the edge and kind of giving a good performance, rather than if they settle into it, they get too comfortable and then they're not delivering the performance that they should be.
Yes, because you're permanently chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and you're never going to get there. But it's like a kind of like that's like life is for all of us, right? You know, we'd all love to be perfect, and we're never getting there. So you strive for the things you want, and then you settle for what you can get, and that's what acting feels like.
And what were some of your first roles then in TV then as you started to kind of move further forward with your career?
Well, I got the kind of break that people hate you for, and they did. I was at drama school. I was at the Central School of Speech and Drama, so unpretentiously named. I really look forward to people saying, "Where did you go to school?" And I'm like, so Central. We all called it Central because it was. I'm the skin. Come on. Now it's the Royal School, the Central School of Speech and Drama, because everything has to be royal now, apparently.
Yeah.
We were really very disappointed because we thought we were it was the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and that was the royal thing. And we thought they were the toffs, you know?
Because you were the London school, you weren't.
We were the ghetto Central School of Speech and Drama. The slightly less middle class people.
So now it's changed its name. Can you get your diploma reissued? So now it says Royal School at the top of it instead of London School.
You know, I don't know. You know what? We had diplomas then. They don't do diplomas anymore. You know, you get a degree. They had to switch it all to for funding. You had to get a degree, which was a bummer because like the drama schools were places where, you know, most actors are not really academic people, and it was places where you didn't have to have a qualification to get in. And now they've like introduced that, and I think that's closed doors to a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate.
I actually think it'd be funnier if James just wrote in the word royal onto his diploma to make it kind of really stand
with a
out.
Sharpie just crossed out.
Trump style.
Yeah. Like totally different ink, the whole lot, like to really make it stand out. Like, this is how far I'm willing to go about this. What was your big break then that everyone, actually, wait a second.
Yeah. I didn't finish that story. Okay, so I was at drama school and I was auditioning for this movie, and they didn't tell me what it was. And then one day they said, "Oh, Richard Attenborough wants to meet you." And I was like, "Oh." And so I then auditioned for Richard Attenborough, and I'm like, "Well, this is good audition practice, you know, for being out in the world." And anyway, basically they like offered me the job. And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" They're like, "Oh yeah, no, this is a movie. It's with Anthony Hopkins and Deborah Winger, and this is like a new role. It was a play, but we've written this role. They want this younger student of Anthony Hopkins, and we're offering you the role right now." I was like, "Why? What?" They're like, "Your number came up, kid. I don't know what to tell you." So I left drama school and I went off to do my first movie with all these towering figures.
And like for you personally, James, meeting these people, like how was it for you? Because like obviously they're big names like Anthony Hopkins, Deborah Winger, Richard Attenborough. I'm sure there was other people kind of as well that you would have come across that you were kind of there going, "Oh wow, like how am I in the same kind of space as these people?" Like how did it feel for you?
Starstruck and terrified. But it was a good sort of way in because it was kind of But also, honestly, it was a brilliant way to start because working with Anthony Hopkins, oh my goodness, I really learned because I'd never been on camera before either. They didn't teach camera when I was at drama school. They were like, if you could do Shakespeare, you could. And it's like, oh God. So I was on camera for the first time, and I mean, he's like one of the greatest ever, right? And so I watch what he was doing. Technically, he's very technical in the way he puts together the shot. Like he's very aware of where he's looking and how that's going to read on camera, and he'll plot out where he's going to look in order to register transitions between different emotional states. And I was watching him kind of do all that and kind of soaking it up. But it was also good practice for that feeling of like going home at the end of the day going, oh my God, that was terrible. They're going to fire me. Like waiting for the phone call going, sorry, love. But they didn't fire me. And I was like, okay, so they didn't fire me. It's just going to be over when the movie comes out.
They're just going to cut the entire role out of the film. Yeah.
Yeah. And that I trust that's happened. But it didn't happen on my first film.
Every time James is on the screen, you just see a big black bar that said censored on it following around the screen. I knew it. I knew they'd do it to me.
Pre-cancellation. Pre-cancelled. The Invisible Man. No, that's when I discovered editing. And I was like, so they take your best bits and then they cut to the other guy and then they take your best bits. Brilliant.
And like after you did that movie, then James, did you kind of say, right, that's it. This is what I want to start doing now. I want to be on camera more than I want to be on stage.
Well done, Joseph. You have called it. That's exactly what it felt like. It did. It felt like because I always struggle a bit on stage. I love acting on stage, but I find it hard. And on a camera felt like it fit like a glove. I just felt like totally at home on set, and I loved everything about it. But I'm still very keen to do theatre, and I've never had that feeling in theatre of comfort that I feel on camera. And that may be that I'm more of a camera actor, or it may be that theatre's just a lot harder and I'm not quite good enough.
Do you still keep up the theatre work?
Yeah, when I can.
What was
it's hard to do here.
Yeah. What was the last play you were in?
Just before COVID, I was at the Chicago Shakespeare Theatre Company. We were doing the play of The King's Speech, which actually started out as a play and was made into a movie first. And then the guy who'd had it for decades, he got it made into a movie. It was like, now I want to do the play. And so he then put the play on in London, and then we were doing it in Chicago. We were going to bring it into Broadway, and then COVID hit, and that was the end of that. And then before that, I'd done a Pinter on Broadway, but haven't done anything in England on theatre for a long time.
Do you hope to do at some point in the future?
Yeah, very much so.
Mike, that's us sorted. When he's doing it, we're 100% going. James, you can get us the complimentary tickets though, right? Like we don't have to pay to go see, right?
You for both of my audience, front row seats.
I'll make sure we bring big banners that just say, "Go, James, you're nailing it."
No,
James Frain 2. James Frain 2.
No, I'm bringing a sign.
Royal James Frain, motherfuckers.
Sir James Frain, not quite.
Yes.
That's your sign, Mike. My sign is going to be Yorkshire tea is made in Yorkshire, just to really piss him off during the show. That's what I'm going to do for my sign.
Potato famine. Potato. Here he is, the famineer.
I'm going to have a sign that says "Repent" as well for you, James.
Yes. Repent.
Admit your crimes. James, I'm completely basing this off IMDb, which I hate doing, but I don't have anything to go by. It's claims
That's how I base my whole life off that. I don't know what you're talking about. What did I do again? Who am I this week?
IMDb claims that your favorite actor is Daniel Day-Lewis. Is that accurate or is that complete garbage?
That was, I think, probably pulled from an early interview because for sure, Daniel Day-Lewis and Gary Oldman, when I was coming up, they were the top of the tree, and they were doing work on film where you're like, oh, that's what we're aiming for. Yeah, for sure. Right at the
Like,
beginning of Daniel Day-Lewis's, I saw Daniel Day-Lewis on stage, and I saw Gary Oldman on stage, and I was like, I want to be like those guys. So
like,
then they started making movies, and I was like, now I really want to be like those guys.
how good were they on stage? Like in terms of say, like comparing it to how good they are in say movies.
Brilliant, brilliant.
And in terms of say, because obviously look, Daniel Day-Lewis is obviously a very famous method actor. Do you do any method acting in your approach when you do acting? No,
No.
absolutely not. Do you? Because I was interested when I was listening to Brian Cox's autobiography, and if you haven't heard it, by God, find it. It is hilarious. In his
Does he
purest
voice it? Does he do
oh,
it
he does,
himself?
and it makes it so much better because it's just he's going to give out stink about
Oh yeah,
people,
he's
and he's
got
going to
things
be
to
honest.
say. That guy's got things to say.
And the audiobook is brilliant. If you like James, if you haven't listened to it, find it, listen to it. It is
Oh yeah,
glorious.
I'll do it. Sold. I didn't even know it was a
And
thing. I'll get it.
and
Yeah.
he was talking about Jesse Armstrong on Succession doing his method acting, and Brian Cox was just there going, I do not agree with method acting at all. Like he said, I just don't think it works. He said it wouldn't be for me. He said maybe it is for other people, but like he's saying that, but you know full well he's also going like, fuck you, it's shit. It doesn't work for anybody. Nobody should ever use method acting in any kind of shape
Well,
or
yeah. I
form.
mean, the thing is like almost no one does, and that is also like that thing that it's Jeremy Strong, I think you're talking about, right? Because Jesse Armstrong one of the writers?
Yes, sorry, that's it. Yeah, Jeremy Strong,
That's
you're right.
fine.
Yes.
But I mean, the thing is that it works so well for his character, right? His
Yeah.
character really, like in a way. So, yeah, this idea of method acting that comes from the 50s, which came from originally Stanislavski and the Russian theater, it's like this idea that you trick yourself into believing you're the character and live in the world of the character. That is way beyond what they were trying to do with method and even what Stanislavski was doing. It's become its own thing. Um, but my feeling about it is from my experience and from working with other actors and being around other actors most of my career is that people are often doing their best work when they're working very intuitively and trusting that, and that all that kind of research is great to do, and then it's better if you can just kind of put it on the back burner and just be in the moment with the other people and see what happens. Like there's a way of trying to control the experience by doing so much character work that you can kind of get lost. And I think that's what Brian Cox and people like that are talking about, where they can see an actor working so hard that they're getting lost in the character, and then they're starting to behave like the character, which happens naturally anyway, and it's probably better you do the opposite, right? So I would say Brian Cox would probably say someone like Jeremy Strong or Daniel Day-Lewis would be just as good if they didn't do that whole process.
Hmm.
But then they would say, yes, but I need to do that process to feel confident enough to get up there. So,
And in all the productions you've been on, then James, have you come across many people method acting in those productions?
not one. It's
Really?
extremely rare.
Ah, interesting. We were discussing this slightly before the podcast started, but I'm going to ask you the Adam Driver question, which
Oh,
is you're there going, what in the name of God is he about to ask me here? Do you
I'm
find
intrigued.
it do you find it hard watching your own work back?
Oh, is that the Adam Driver question? Because he gave a really good answer.
No, well, we haven't had him on the show yet. We'll someday get him on the show.
Okay.
But
No,
why is it the Adam Driver question?
because he does not watch his own work back.
He doesn't?
Like,
No.
he just flat out refuses, will not touch it.
Yeah.
I don't believe him. But I don't believe him.
Mike, get Adam Driver's agent on the phone right now, and we're going to have a conversation here with James.
Well, you can't because you have to do ADR. You have to be in the studio and watch your work when you're doing there's a lot of vocal corrections that have to happen.
Yeah.
So you're going to see it. He may not sit down and watch the movie, and he may find watching himself intolerable, but that's fairly common amongst actors.
I think it's
So,
more from that watching the final piece rather than anything that needs to be
yeah.
edited. Yeah.
You can't watch your own work like other people watch the movie. You're watching with such a critical eye, so it's not a very enjoyable experience, to be honest with you. It's
Is
much
there
more
any
fun.
is there any situations, James, where you find it easier watching, say, yourself back and say harder in other places? I know other people we've had on the podcast at times have said that if they're acting in prosthetics, they find it easier watching themselves back than if they're acting with no prosthetics, say, because they feel that the prosthetics there, it masks them. It feels like it's a totally different person they're actually watching rather than it being themselves.
That makes sense. Yeah, the nearest thing I've had to prosthetics is like that thing, the eyebrows and the that would make sense. I don't find it. I think like you have to kind of come to terms with that inner critic voice that we all have, um, and like turn it down because it's not really your friend, and try and get like the good bits out of it, where it's like, oh, you could do this, you could do that, like the helpful bits, and sort of turn down your shit. You should never work again. It's incredible you haven't been fired. It's just like, as you're watching it, like, why are you still? How are you still getting away with this? But I mean, everyone has that. Everyone has imposter syndrome, except imposters. They're the only people who don't have imposter syndrome. They're so busy imposting,
They
but
don't have
everyone
time to
else
think
was
about
like, I don't have a right to be here. Whereas imposters are like, I am on the hustle. I fucking have a
it.
right
Yeah.
to be. I'm hustling.
Well, they're too busy thinking about hustling rather than.
They're too busy imposting to have imposter
Yeah.
syndrome.
Wait a second.
You can only have a syndrome if you're not the thing itself.
Is imposting an actual verb?
Impostering? No, it can't be that.
I don't know.
If you are an imposter, are you imposting? I don't know. Did I just make up a word?
I think you did, James, and I think this needs to be put into the what's
The
The
Oxford
Royal English Dictionary of Colonial Expansion.
did you ever watch the Blackadder episode with the dictionary?
Which one was that?
The one with Robbie Coltrane in it. It's Blackadder the Third when Blackadder
Okay.
was the
Okay. I
butler
just
to the
started
Prince.
rewatching Blackadder, funnily enough.
Oh really? Oh god! When you get to the episode, it's glorious. Like Blackadder the
Yeah.
Third for me is the best of the Blackadders. I think it's
With King George and all that. Yeah.
Prince George, yeah, with Hugh Laurie, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah, Hugh
ludicrous
Laurie,
stuff. Like,
yeah.
I tell you what, going back on
Robbie
what we were
Coltrane, wasn't
Yeah.
he?
Yeah.
Oh, he's so good.
just on the note of Hugh Laurie, a brilliant American accent.
That's what the Americans say. They say
Yeah.
he's the best.
Well, so I'm
like,
in the process of
I'm like,
rewatching
surely you
House.
mean second best? No.
Yes. Yeah. You're number one. Then it's him.
And they're like, yeah, no, Daniel Day-Lewis, obviously. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's who I meant. That's who I meant. That's who I meant.
and
No, imposting is not an official word according to the Britannica Dictionary.
Okay. You'll
Listen,
cut
these
that bit
start-
out then.
yeah,
We're going to add it in.
Spare my blushes.
When you say the verb actually imposting, Mike will actually put a big text box that kind of appears around your head saying imposting all over the place to really draw attention.
James is currently imposting as someone who understands grammar.
We'll have a countdown timer in the episode as well. It says imposting reference in 3, 2.
We'll do sirens and flashing lights.
I mean, look, acting is the ultimate imposter syndrome, right? Because you're not going to be this other guy. You're not. You're just not. You're you. You're pretending to be the other guy. You're lending them your feelings and your experiences, and you're trying to, it's a bit of a trick, and you hope you get away with it. So it's like the ultimate imposter syndrome.
So kind of I was going to say, so kind of on that note, then, I mean, you have. I think IMDb has something like 95, 96 credits.
Jeez.
Is what IMDb has listed. So you have such a huge body of work. What are some of your favorite roles to imposting?
Well, obviously, Sarah, obviously.
Of course.
Actually, that was a bit of a challenge when it comes to imposter syndrome.
Only logical.
Like, would you like to play an iconic character who is beloved by millions of people as a younger man? No pressure, no pressure.
It's only logical.
I was like, Nice.
I couldn't resist. Sorry.
Yeah. Actually, no, but Star Trek was great to work on, and it was a great group of people. And Sonequa Martin Green is as like the best you've come across. You can get her on your show. She's an absolute diamond. I love doing that. I do like green screen work. I love doing Tron for that reason. Um, I really love doing True Blood. That was a lot of fun. That was a fun character to play. I think if I have a fun character, those are usually a fun character or an interesting experience or people that I really love working with. So I loved working with Sonequa. Most of my scenes with her, I was her sort of surrogate father figure. And so that was a big part of that experience. And also, just being on part of the launch of a new show on a new set with the kind of special effects they had, the kind of budget they had available, that was kind of great. And yeah, so those would be the first two I think of.
You said that
Tudors, because I really loved all the research and I loved filming in Ireland. I absolutely love filming in Dublin, love Dublin. And we did Tudors was all in Dublin.
James, are you only saying that because the co-host of this podcast is Irish by any chance?
Yes.
Well, at least he's honest.
But I also love working in Woking.
Ah, good man.
Working and Woking and Dorking and Dorking.
Although I think to be fair, it was the closest one here. We'd probably
Dude, I think we've established that I have a right to invent verbs at this point.
100%. Give me a list. We'll get them added.
Dorking.
Yes.
Yeah. That's actually a double entendre.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I love doing the Tudors. I like doing history stuff because I like all the research. And Tudors was great because he really did get into it. He told a lot of story there, and that was fun. That was fun stuff.
And in terms of, say, the different roles you've had, James, is there any role that you went for that you didn't get that you regret not getting?
Well, hundreds. And so, and the thing is, that's every actor's career, and I'm fucked if I'm going to tell you what they are, because it's like every actor has. I read this somewhere, and it was a really good observation. It was like every actor has this shadow career of all the roles they didn't get, where it's almost like, remember that movie Sliding Doors from the 90s, where it's like he goes in one door if he could have gone through the other door, and you can't carry that shit around because you didn't get it. So, but most of us in life, we don't really think that much about all the jobs we didn't get. But if you're an actor, you're auditioning like all the time. You're out for roles all the time, and you're not getting most of them. So that's just part of it.
So, James, what you're saying is that as a result of this podcast and this conversation tonight, you'll be getting ready to go to bed, like trying to scrub the dirt off you, remembering a bad audition you did go on. I didn't get the role because of fucking X, Y, or Z reason. I'm completely unclean. Why did he have to bring back that memory?
I did. Actually, I had surgery to remove the memories, so I'm good.
Like eternal
mind meld. No,
they're on a hard drive somewhere, and I'm sure we could download them. You could see my shadow career. In which James Frain won, actually won.
I need to find this James Frain one on
Who
Instagram.
Is he?
Find out
who is he, and why does he have all my Oscars? I'll tell you one Star Trek fun thing. We did a scene one day where they had we were in a cave. It was in a mock-up of a cave, and they did a wall of heads, and some of these heads were modeled. I think they were all modeled on Sarek? Anyway, they did a cast of me in the role, and then these were the heads on the wall, and then they backlit them, and they gave me one of the heads as a gift at the end of the show. Usually they give you like a pen or something. They're like, no, look, here's a head of you. And it's kind of great. I have it in a Perspex box.
Oh.
Yes, my Sarek head. Not on display because I'm not disturbed, but it's fun to have in a cupboard.
You're not going to have it as like a headphone stand or something, or a hat stand.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Put it on your desk and put your headphones on it.
James, there it is. Like Mike is
No,
giving
but
you
I broke the ears. I broke the ears.
Oh, short is plaster or resin. We can just make you new
It's
ones.
resin. It is resin. No, but it's firmly ensconced in perspex for eternity.
I was just expecting, like, imagine guests coming into James's house while he's offering them tea, and they go into the sitting room, and the fireplace, a ginormous perspex, a thing of his head inside there.
Yeah.
James, we might just leave. Thanks very much for
Yeah,
inviting us
like
over.
where people have the stag on the walls.
You've got Sarek's head. Yeah.
Here's the first. This was when I actually tried to kill myself, and I cut my own head off and stuffed it, and I put the antlers on. Obviously, I got an artist to do that. Special effects did the antlers. Yeah, and I am now a projection
From a parallel universe where you won so many other
from
roles.
the mirror universe. I might even say.
Oh.
My favorite thing in Star Trek is the mirror universe. I love that.
Mike,
what you should do then is draw on the goatee.
Oh yeah.
Then that one's the mirror universe that you conquered. There you go.
It was. They gave me a goatee. They were like, "We're going to do a jazz Sarek."
Did you have to do jazz hands when you were doing it though? As well?
No, I just would listen to Coltrane. I had a little bit of swagger.
Mike, because James is unwilling to tell us what the Oscar-nominated movies that he should have been in were, right? I need you to do a favor as a big, wonderful graphic designer. I need you to superimpose James's head onto the winners of all the best actors over the last 20 years. And do for the movie posters as well. Just put up a James Frain picture. I think it kind of works better in that situation.
Yeah. Well, he's my agent now, so he also can do the PR. The PR, which we know is a campaign of lying.
I'll tell you what, I'll just use your tagline from Instagram. We'll just use that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actor not for sale under a certain negotiable price.
Oh, yeah. I have to come up with something.
James, am I correct in saying, again, I'm basing this on IMDb, of course, which you refer to every day to remind yourself of what your life is and where you've come from, where you're going. Is your wife a director?
My wife is a director.
Fantastic.
She directed an episode of Star Trek Discovery.
She did.
She did, that's right. How did you find it as having her directing you? Like, was it kind of like, we're not going to talk to each other in the car and the drive home after the day's work, or what was it like?
Well, you can't anyway, because the directors work so much harder than actors. I mean, we come on, we do a scene, and then we go on for the trailer, and then we stand around craft tables talking and eating food all day. Whereas they are working constantly, so there's no time for talking. But yeah, she was great to work.
In terms of, say, like, all the shows that you've been in terms of, like, big ones like Quantum Leap, Elementary, Orphan Black, all those kind of things and all that, they've got such a kind of a strong following in terms of, say, very kind of passionate fan base and things like that, including obviously Star Trek and things like that. How have you found that you've connected with the audiences, and how do you find that when you're, say, recognized on the street? Obviously, when people say you're that guy from the movies, but when people actually recognize you specifically from a show, how do you kind of find those interactions?
Well, it's interesting. I think that I'm trying to figure out, as you're asking that question, I'm like, am I going to answer this one honestly? And I am. I think that I think that I occupy, it's a bit like Mike was saying, with there's a little bit of negative space that I occupy that the fans cut me out of. And people see me on the street and they're like, you look a bit like a kind of an actor I saw in something sometime, but they don't actually kind of make that connection. So I have never really had that fan thing, to be honest with you.
Good. And like, in terms of over your career and things like that, and all the movies you're in, things like that, who were some of the kind of say, I'm not going to say the best actors, that's not fair, but see, who are some of your favorite actors, actresses, directors to worked with over the years?
Yeah, the people. I think the best way I have of understanding that question is like, who are the people that I've learned most from? Who have I been most inspired by, or who have I most loved working with? So for sure, Kate Blanchett, on Elizabeth, like that was her first movie, if you can imagine. It was maybe her third movie, but it was her first big leading role. She was 26, and she walked in with this performance, and I was like, okay, star. Um, Hopkins, obviously. I would say Tatiana Maslany on Orphan Black for sure. Sonequa Martin Green on Star Trek. Like these are Tatiana and Sonequa are like great green screen actors, like in the same kind of way that Andy Serkis is, where it's like
Yeah.
nothing throws them. They're always going to deliver a fully realized human performance. It doesn't matter what the character is, it's always going to be a breathing person, right? Jeff Bridges on Tron, yeah. So I've got to work with a lot of people whose work I admired anyway, but you learn, you sort of learn from watching them, you learn from being with them, and you learn from the exchange with them, like how they carry themselves, how much do they put themselves in the work, how fun they are to work with. Yeah, those would be high on the list.
And you were saying you've kind of gotten into teaching acting now as well. Was that something you always wanted to do, or where did that kind of come about from in your career, in your say, in your life, in your career?
I had a friend who was teaching at USC and asked me if I would be interested in coming and do some workshops there. And so I started doing that and I really enjoyed it. And then, so I do it from time to time, that kind of thing. And sometimes I do workshops and so on. But I also still learn. I still go to workshops and I'm one of those eternal student people.
Every day's a school day.
Oof, that sounds awful. That sounds awful.
Like in terms of, look, again, I'm asking an exceptionally specific question to an incredibly broad topic, but what are some of the kind of, like, I suppose points mightn't be the best word to describe it. What are some of the kind of, well, I'm going to say it, what are some of the points that you want to try and get across to, say, students in terms of acting, say, as they're kind of going through? Like, what do you think are some of the...
Question. It's a good question. Well, it actually relates back to the method question, which is what I find, and I like teaching because I learn a lot. They say you really learn something when you teach it, because you have to really kind of figure out, like, how do I get this across? And then you realize, oh, there's actually some stuff I need to research. But then working with actors in the room, most of what I see is, and most of what I help people do is remove obstacles, remove internal blocks, and that's what most of it is. So getting people to remove whatever it is that they believe negatively about themselves that's getting in the way of the work, so that they can work freely off of their talent without kind of constricting themselves. That's the main thing.
In terms then, say, how did the role of Sarek come up then for Star Trek then? Had you been were you a Star Trek fan growing up? Obviously, look, you would be aware of it because it's kind of everywhere. But had you kind of watched much of it kind of like over the years and things like that?
Well, I mean, I'm of that generation where we watched it on TV, on the reruns on Saturday morning, right? So that was just it was part of my, like, it was part of the TV universe of my life. But I actually got the role, like, I think about a week before shooting. So
Okay.
I don't know, but my guess would be someone else. They had someone else who dropped out.
Oh,
which is often the way. It's often the way. There is a saying in Hollywood that you're always fifth choice. It keeps us humble.
there's
true.
actually...
They were like, I literally got a phone call from my agent. They're like, they're doing the read through tomorrow. Do you want to be Spock's dad?
Just might drop that in there and just...
Yeah. And I was like, hell yeah, I want to be Spock's dad. And then I got to the read through and they were like, how do you feel about playing an iconic, beloved character? And I was like, I didn't know that bit. I didn't. Did I sign? Have I signed? I have signed.
So how hard was it for you then to take on the role of Sarek? Because obviously there is a rich history with Sarek.
It wasn't that hard because we all have an understanding of Spock, right? We all understand what Spock means in the mythology of the show, and then I really enjoyed like reading about the prehistory of Vulcans and all that kind of stuff. And I watched all of Mark Leonard's work, and it was really fun. It was fun doing all that. And I'm like, well, I can't be him, obviously, but I can be sort of a version of something that might grow into him, maybe, you know.
And like, say, how to put it? How did you play a man who has emotions but has kind of suppressed them, and kind of like, because your performance is brilliant. Like watching you kind of do it, it's just it's pure Vulcan. Like it's absolutely brilliant. I'm just curious, like, what approach did you kind of take? Because obviously you would watch Mark Leonard stuff and all that, and Leonard's kind of performance is so well known and all that. But what approach did you want to take with it? Did you say, I know what Vulcan people are expecting to see, or did you say I want to kind of do it the way I feel most comfortable with doing it?
The thing that I found really useful was reading the mythology of the prehistory of Vulcan and how they came to be the way they were, which was uh, that my understanding, at least, was that the Vulcans were originally a very passionate people, and that they had a terrible series of wars, which had ended in a really bad nuclear conflict that very few of them survived. And at the end of it, they concluded that it was passion that had caused all the wars. And so they learned to suppress passion in order to be a peaceful society. And I was like, that's pretty actable. I mean, that's really helpful, you know, where it's like, this is like playing someone who has a rich interior emotional life, but isn't allowed to express it that's very dynamic thing to play on screen. That often reads really well on screen.
Because of the fact that I know you're a history buff, and the way you said that, it sounded like it was coming directly from a BBC documentary about the history on the conflicts on the planet of Vulcan going back centuries.
And that's how my mind works, Sean. That's how my mind works.
And like you obviously mentioned Sonequa, because everyone we've spoken to who's been on Discovery has always spoken in such positive terms about her.
I mean, it's literally should be president. Like, it's ridiculous.
And like, what was it about her that brought so much kind of love, positivity, and energy to the set?
It was her love, positivity, and energy. You literally called her. Like, she's the real deal. She's the real deal.
Who else on the kind of, say, the cast and all that would you've kind of like been around and you would have spoken, kind of dealt with kind of a lot then outside of Sonequa?
Well, the rest of them were just assholes who I'd throw in a burning pit of hell. Well, I mean, dude, I got to work with Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
I got to work with Michelle Yeoh. It was pretty amazing. I knew a couple of people a little bit. Our paths had crossed. Like Jason Isaacs, we came up around the same time. We bumped each other over the years. Everyone else was pretty new, and that it was a well-cast show. Like a well-cast show is not just getting actors who are right for the role. It's getting people that are going to get along.
Yeah.
And they found a group of people who were going to really bond and really like each other. And that's smart casting. And it worked really well on that show. I mean, it very quickly felt like a family. It needed to feel like a family. I think that's part of the Star Trek deal. You don't want that. You don't want it to be a dysfunctional family. You want people to be actually enjoying each other and getting along. And so they got really great people, really great people.
If you had a chance in the future to come back as Sarek or another character in Star Trek, again, because I know the fact that you like playing specific kind of interesting characters and things like that, would you do it?
Yeah. In a heartbeat.
There we go. We need Sarek in Strange New Worlds then.
Well, I mean, I don't know what it would be, because in Star Trek, there's a lot of new ones, but I mean, they jumped 5 centuries into the future. And I was like, I've got a feeling I'm not coming with you, am I? And they're like, sorry, you got to stay in the timeline.
But you could be in Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, so
if you want
to, Mike, now you're my agent, you could put a call in.
I'll phone Kurtzman later and I'll go, oi.
You'll have you'll have a taste of the life of an agent. Hi, I'd like to talk. Hello, hello.
To be fair, Shaw would be the much better agent because he's used to
Yeah.
reaching out to people ignoring him now. So
Have you thought about James Frain? For Frain 2.
I hear you're making a new Tron movie. Do you want him back?
Very valid. Don't you love that we still do this for phones? Yeah, because you have to, right?
It's
It's the international
ubiquitous,
sign of
isn't
the
it?
phone. It is. It's like that, but this.
Yes.
Because you can't really go, hello, hello. That's a bit daft, isn't it?
I suppose you could
Hello.
do that. Hello.
Yeah. And then people are like, I can't see your face. Can you just do that?
But it's true though. For like if you're going out or something, you can't hear someone. Just say, "I'll phone you." Yeah, and then
Yeah.
it's ubiquitous, isn't it?
I love it when these little pod things came along because people are constantly walking down the street talking to themselves all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't look like so much of a nutter.
Because you talk
Because
to yourself all the time.
I do, but also I learn my lines walking. I can't learn my lines sitting still, so I go on walks, and I learn my I learn my lines walking. People used to be like cross the street, but now they're like, well, obviously he's on the phone.
Yeah. But you sitting there with a script, just
But well,
walking
let's
down
cross
the
the
street.
street anyway. He looks a bit odd.
He's got that weird non-American accent thing. I don't know exactly
I don't
what it
know. He
is.
turns his accent on and off. He does. Very dodgy. Bit of an imposter.
So, if you're doing a show or movie that is in an American accent, do you learn your lines in an American accent?
Oh yeah, yeah. You have
You
to.
do.
Yeah. Hmm. It's really
How-
hard. I have to say, it's one of the harder challenges is doing American
Because
because
I didn't know if you kind of just got the words right and then from that point onwards go, okay, and then I have to put it into an accent.
no, because then you'll learn because whatever you repeat, you're repeating, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, you're trying to trick your brain into thinking you do speak this way. So you've got to kind of do that.
Yeah.
It's also it comes with a mindset. Like every character has a mindset which affects how they talk and
Yeah. Like
And so
handwriting.
the accent's wrapped up in that. So it's like it's not like, oh, I'm doing an accent. It's just part of the whole character, like I don't know how you describe it, the whole character
Yeah.
portfolio. That's not really the right word, but you know what I'm saying? It's
Showcase.
part of the character work. But after a while, you start doing all these things automatically. You're not really thinking about how you do it.
Right.
What you're thinking is like, God, I've got to get these lines down. God, I hate learning my lines. But what you're doing is walking around the street, talking to yourself like a nutter. But then obviously years of experience, you hope, is happening in the background.
Yes. Got you.
And James, what's in the future for you then? You mentioned obviously you've been doing some teaching, you said you're doing directing and things like that. What do you kind of hope to do kind of next? Outside of finding James Frain 1 and getting him to deactivate his Instagram page so you can take back over.
Shooting him in the face. What do you, well, there's two different questions there. What do I see in my future is long periods of unemployment and hoping. But that's not necessarily, doesn't mean it's the future. What I like to do in my future is definitely moving towards directing for sure.
And like
But
how much directing
I would like to be one of those actors I want to be like 80 years old and acting. I'm going to be those guys.
Ah, very good. And Mike, do you have any questions left for James?
No. Other than the very ubiquitous last question that we ask all of our guests that won't take any thought whatsoever.
Uh-oh.
In that case, then, James Frain, what does Star Trek mean to you?
Wow.
Told you, easy question.
I do see
Well, I mean,
eyes
what Star
light
Trek
up.
means to me, like, is having lived here, knowing the kind of history, knowing like, and being a history nerd is Star Trek for me is really wrapped up in civil rights and the optimism of the 60s and the hope for future societies that are free of the kinds of prejudices that sort of weigh us down. And it was like, to me, I think that's always been part of the magic of Star Trek, is it was born in that moment. It comes out of that idea of like, no, in the future we're all really going to get along, and there's going to be no more racism and war, and we're just going to kind of discover things. And it's like, and it panned out exactly like that. It really worked out. It's going so well over here. It's just like, it was like uncanny.
Yeah. One day it'll happen. But don't forget, we've got to get through World War III yet.
We do. Something to look forward to, eh?
We're going to end this podcast on such a happy note.
This message of hope is brought to you by James Frain 2.
Presenting World War III.
Oh, James.
I mean, I always think if you travel back in time to the 1920s and 30s, and you said to people, "How are you enjoying the interwar period?" They'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?
We've just got over one war.
We just had the war to end all wars.
Yeah.
There's never going to be another war. There's never going to be a war as bad as that again." And you're like, "Oh, got it. You don't know what's
Wait until you find out about mustard gas." Yep.
Yeah. You were like, that was actually the kind of warm-up.
Yeah.
That was a jog around the park, frankly.
Yeah.
What was this? In an episode of Frasier, Niles was referring to, I think their father was watching a documentary on World War II, and Niles says, in the way only Niles can say, he said, World War II, for those who thought that the original was fun but too short.
Oh, God.
Frasier was good at lines like that, eh? They had some there's some meaty comedy in that show.
They did.
Actually, another audiobook recommendation for you, James. I'm listening to an audiobook about Sheepers. James Burrows is his name. He's a director, so he directed a load of TV shows, but
yeah, I know. Yeah.
he directed Frasier, Friends, and all that kind of thing. But he's an audiobook directed by James Burrows, is what it's exactly called. It's actually quite good, and he talks a lot about the behind-the-scenes stuff on all the different TV shows and all that. So it's actually really quite good. He talks about his directing approach and style and all that kind of thing. So it's definitely one to listen to.
I'm writing it down because I have to write everything down immediately, or it's gone.
I'm the
James
same.
Burrows and Brian Cox.
Yeah.
I love an audio book. Brilliant. Look at that. I got a great tip. Appreciate it.
More than welcome, James.
So on that very positive ending to the show,
Yes.
James, thank you so much.
Maybe I can narrate World War III when it's happening, like Laurence Olivier did for World War II.
Yes.
Or I can do it in real time.
Oh, God.
It's going really badly out here in the South China Sea. Oops.
I was watching something the other day, and they were saying if nuclear war happens, you need to be in Australia to survive. Apparently, because it would be Russia.
You need
attacking...
to be a cockroach to survive.
Well, there is that, but they were saying it'd be Russia that attacks either Europe or America that attacks Russia. So Australia is as far away from those as you can possibly get. So you should survive.
I don't think it's going to be a nuclear war.
No, I don't think anyone's that stupid.
No.
But you never know. Worst things have happened at sea, as they say.
Oh, I don't think they have. Ask the Vulcans.
Yes.
We
need James to narrate the Vulcan War, as I said. Like I just
great
audiobook.
Ooh, good backstory.
Yeah.
The Vulcan Warrior Vulcans. Before, when Vulcans were bad.
It sounds like a pirate novel.
Yeah.
Well, look, as James's agents, we do have to get on it, like, and get the deals kind of signed for him.
Please do, please get me a job. Very much available.
James, this has been a real laugh. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you so much for coming on.
Me too. Great to meet you guys. That was a good crack. For sure.
So for everyone watching and listening, remember you can catch up with more Clonestar podcast at our website, clonestarpod.com. But until next time, live long and prosper.
Do that.